Okay, hopefully I can get these all done in the last video. What we're going to do here is it's now solving. So anytime you see solve, you need an answer like x equals, this is the type of answers, x equals 3, maybe negative 2/5, even a negative 0.2, something like that. It may even be something that looks like this, 1 plus or minus the square root of 10. But it shouldn't be like anything that looks like this. This is not a solve, okay? I need an x equals something, okay? So if you ended up with something like this, it would be x equals 6 and x equals negative 3 right here. All right, so in this particular case, this one does not factor. I always look for things to factor. It won't. So you can't use square root property because it has a negative 6x. You could complete the square, okay? I'll show you two different ways. If we're going to complete the square, I take the 3 to the other side, and I get x squared minus 6x. I'm going to leave some room, and when I take the 3 to the other side, it becomes a positive 3. Now, to complete the square, I take half of this, so it would meaning I divide by 2, and I get negative 3. And I say, write this down. Now you're going to square it. Which when you square a negative 3, you get a positive 9. If I add 9 there, I have to add 9 here. Okay, the reason I had you write this part down is because what you do on this left-hand side is factor that. It factors as x minus 3 squared. This gives us 12. Now that we have that, I'm going to erase this so that it gives me room to work. I wasn't going to do completing the square on this problem until I started the video. Okay, so now I have this. Square root property says the opposite of square is square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. When I do that, this cancels that out, and I have x plus, let's try x minus 3. I'm left with x minus 3 on this left-hand side. On this side, I can rewrite 12 as the square root of 4 times 3. Square root of 4 is 2, so over here I get plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Now I take the 3 to the other side, and I get x is equal to 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Okay? Most of you will use quadratic formula. Okay? You have to know the quadratic formula in order to use it, but it is x equals negative b, so it's going to be 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is negative 6 squared, minus 4 times my a, which is 1, times my c, which is negative 3. All over 2 times 1, 2 times my a, which is 1. Okay, I'm going to just simplify this. I get 6 plus or minus. When I work all this out, this gives me 36, a positive 36. This gives me 12. So 36 plus 12 gives me 48, all over 2. Now, I have to simplify that. That will, when I do the square root of 48, I'm just going to do it over here. The biggest perfect square that goes into 48 is 16. So 16 times 3. This gives me the square root of 16 is 4. So I have 4 times the square root of 3. So really I have 6 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3 all over 2. Now this will all reduce. This will reduce by 2. I'm going to reduce this by 2, and I'm going to reduce this by 2. And I'm end up with 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3 all over 1, which is the same thing I got here. Now, I didn't read the directions until now, So we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. You didn't even have to know how to reduce, you could have taken it from here. You wouldn't have had to say square root of 12 is 4 times 3. Okay, you could have just said square root of 12. But seeing it says to do that, because you don't know, it may not have the, when you go to your final, or when you're taking your final, I don't know if it's going to have this answer or this answer. So anyway, okay, so I'm just going to use this 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. And it's going to round to x is approximately 6.46. Again, you could have done this from this answer. You could have gotten this from where the 12 is. If I had just said right here, oh, I forgot, that's one answer. We don't have the other answer. Sorry, I was like, well, I'm supposed to have two answers. I just did the 3 plus 2 times the square root of 3, but I also have to do 3 minus 2 times the square root of 3. When I do that, my other answer, let's put it here, is negative 0.46. So those are my two answers. Again, I simplified some things you didn't have to. I would have had plus or minus. In this case, I would have had 3 plus or minus the square root of 12. I could have done the exact same thing from there. 3 plus second square root of 12. It will give us this answer here. And then when I do the minus of that, it gives us this answer. So if it gives you a decimal answer, you don't have to do all the simplifying. All right, now, right here, you want to get rid of all fractions. I don't want to work with fractions, okay, so I want to get rid of it. First thing you're going to do is factor this bottom. It's going to factor as y plus 5 times y plus 3. Now, to get rid of my fractions, I am going to multiply by my least common denominator. How do we find that? What you do is you write down your first denominator, which is this. Then what you're going to do is go to your next one. Do we already have that down here? Yes, we do. So we do not need to write this one. We don't need to list it. Go to your next one. Do we already have a y plus 5? Yes. So we don't need to list it. Okay? Then what you're going to do is you are going to multiply each one of these by your LCD. So I'm going to multiply this times y plus 5, y plus 3. I'm going to multiply this times y plus 5, y plus 3. And I'm going to multiply this one times y plus 5 and y plus 3. This is actually how I work these problems. I'm going to show you a different way. It's not really a different way. I just can do it up here because at this point, I know this is going to cancel that out because that's what this is equal to. And I'm left with 6 on the top. See, I got rid of my fraction. Now, here my y plus 3's are going to cancel. So I'm going to say negative 2 times y is negative 2y. Negative 2 times 5 gives me negative 10. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. Now my y plus 5's cancel. So I'm going to distribute this negative 4 times y gives me negative 4y. And negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Now, when you go to look at my answers, I did all that work over here. That's perfectly fine. You'll notice that I got the exact same thing as I did when I did it my way right here. I have 6 minus 2y minus 10 equals negative 4y minus 12. So if you like it this way, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, I'm going to just solve the problem now. Before I start moving things, I'm going to combine my like terms. That there gives me negative 4 equals negative 4y minus 12. I'm going to take my negative 4y over here by adding it. And I am going to take this 4 over to this side by adding that 4. What happens is that cancels out. I have positive 2y here. I got my y's on the same side because that cancels each other out to give us 0. Okay, this gives me negative 8. Divide by 2, and y is equal to negative 4. The only thing you have to be careful about is this okay to have? Well, I didn't do my restrictions in the beginning, but y cannot be negative 5. It can be any number but negative 5 right here and negative 3 right there. Same thing here. It can't be negative 3 because it's going to give us 0. It can't be negative 5 because it's going to give us 0. We got negative 4, so everything's good. And you can plug this in to check to make sure this left side equals the right. Even with these, you can. All right. Now again, I spread mine out so that I can do some work. First of all, let's do our restrictions. I didn't do that the first time. X cannot equal a negative 2 here because that would give this 0. And it can't be a 4 here. When I factor this, this will factor as x minus 4 and x plus 2. Okay? Again, same thing. Can't be 4, can't be negative 2. We didn't have to list another restriction. Okay, least common denominator. You take your first denominator and write it down. You take your next denominator, and do we already have it over here? We don't, so we're going to list that as well. Then you go to your next denominator. Do we already have an x minus 4? Yes. Do we already have an x minus 2? Yes. So we don't have to list anything else. Now again, if you look at my answers, I'm going to multiply each one of these over here by our LCD. But if I'm just working it, I'm just going to multiply it right here. Everything I see, I'm going to multiply by that. I'm doing the same thing here as I did on my notes. I'm just doing it here instead of rewriting everything. Either way is fine. This cancels, so I really have, I'm just going to bring this down. I have 3x times this x minus 4. I could have gone ahead and said 3x squared minus 12x. That's perfectly fine. Now I have minus 5. These cancel, and I have x plus 2. Again, I could have distributed like I did on the last problem and said negative 5x minus 10. I have an equal sign. The x minus 4s are going to cancel. The x plus 2s are going to cancel. So I'm just left with 2x squared minus 14x. Because I have an x squared, I'm going to get everything over to one side. I'm going to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to bring this over here by subtracting it. That cancels that out. I'm going to bring this negative 14x over here to get a positive 14x. So this gives me x squared. Now you'll notice I have all three of these, okay? I'm just going to do it all at once. This gives me negative 17 plus 14 gives me negative 3x. Okay, and over here I said plus 14x. So that canceled each other out. I have minus 10 equals 0. This one will factor, so I'm going to factor it as x minus 5, x plus 2. This x equals 5 here, x is equal to negative 2 here. So I have the answer of x equals 5 and negative 2. But double check. Negative 2 is a restriction because that would give us 0. So we've got to kick that answer out. So our only answer is x equals 5. Because the other one was 4. So 5 is good. Okay, this one right here. I'm going to, what will take care of a square root is squared. So I'm going to square both sides. Right here, this square and square root and squares cancel each other out. So I am left with 2x minus 4 equals 36. All right, so, and again, all of these can be checked. Okay, you use your store button, plug it in, make sure the left equals the right. Because on these, you have to check them. You have to here. Because even though you may come up with an answer, when you check it, it may not work. All right, so now I'm going to take the 4 over here by adding it. I'm just skipping some steps because I'm talking it through. And I get 40. Now I'm going to divide by 2. And x is equal to 20. Okay, so we need to check it. Again, you can do this on your calculator, but I'm just showing you. You're going to take your 20 and plug it in for x right here. That's the original problem. I took out the x and put 20. This gives me 40. 40 minus 4 gives me the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6. So the left equaled the right. So this answer checked out. So it's good to go. Be careful when you have something like this. You can't square anything until you get the radical by itself. You're going to take the 2 to the other side. You're going to do that by subtracting it. So it goes away here. So you have the square root of x plus 18 equals x minus 2. To get rid of a square root, you square it. Now here's where you may run into trouble. This side is not a problem. You get x plus 18. This side does not give you x squared plus 4, nor does it give you x squared minus 4. If you don't know that it gives us x squared minus 4x plus 4, you have to know that it does this. I know the shortcut, so I use that. If you don't, you've got to write this out and do FOIL, and I promise you will find that it gives us this. Now I've got to set it equal to 0, so I am going to take my x to the other side by subtracting it. That cancels each other out. I'm going to take the 18 to the other side by subtracting it because that cancels out. So now I have 0 equals x squared minus 5x minus 16. Okay. Nope, let's try equals 14. Sorry. Not 16, 14. I was thinking that was a 2 for some reason. I have no idea. All right, this will factor. If you can't factor it, you can use quadratic formula. It doesn't really matter. X minus 7, x plus 2. So here, my x is 7. Here, it's negative 2. You must check both of these. Okay? If I check 7, and I plug it in. Okay. When I check this, I'm going to take out the x and I'm going to replace it with 7 wherever I see it. So I'm going to have 7 plus 18 under the radical plus 2 equals x, which in this case it's 7. I also will have to check the other one. I'm just going to do this right now, where I'm plugging it in. I have -2. Let me just write this on. I'll switch my pens. I have -2 plus 18 plus 2 will equal -2, as long as that's correct. If it checks, then both of them are good. Okay. All right, this gives me the square root of 25, which is 5. 5 plus 2 gives us 7. Okay, so the 7 check, that one's good. Over here, I get the square root of 16. That gives me 4. Does 4 plus 2 give us a -2? No, it gives us 6. 6 is not equal, so this one does not, so I have to cancel that. I have to cross that one out. My only answer is 7. The only way you're going to know is to check it. Now you can use your store button, you can check it on your calculator. I'm just showing you on paper. And you can actually even just, visualize, check it in your head. Okay, this one right here. Remember, absolute value is a distance from 0. So this particular case, when I take this 4 to the other side, you have to get that absolute value by itself before you can do anything else. So I'm going to subtract 4, and I get the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to -2. All right. There is nothing, this is going to be a no solution. The reason it's a no solution is absolute value is always positive. It's a distance from 0. Doesn't matter if it's left or it's right. It does not matter. Okay? Because again, absolute value is always positive. There's no way to get negative distance. So again, that's why. Some of you are going to do this. X plus 1 equals a -2. Then you're going to subtract 1. And you're going to say x is equal to -3. Well, if you check that, all right, if you checked it, the absolute value of -3 plus 1 plus 4 should give us 2 if that is right. Well, this gives me the absolute value of -2. Well, the absolute value of -2 is 2. 2 plus 4 does not equal, does not equal 2. It gives us 6. So that doesn't check. And if you do a positive, it's not going to work either. Okay. G. All right, so now we're into the section of logarithms and exponentials. It's the last section that we talked about. Right here, I'm going to bring this down so I have more room to work. I'm going to do this. Because our bases are different and our exponent is on a base of 4, what I want to do is to get this 4 to cancel out and free up that exponent. I'm going to take the log of base 4. It's the exact same. Because our bases are the same, they cancel each other out and free up that exponent so that I get x minus 1. If I take the log base 4 there, I am going to have to do log base 4 here. Because what you do to one side, you do to the other. Again, it doesn't matter if this has parentheses or not. It doesn't matter. All right, so I'm going to solve for x by adding 1. Take this minus 1 to the other side by adding it. So my answer is log base 4 of 3 plus 1. You will not see this as a multiple choice answer. You won't see the decimal answer either. All right? This is what you're going to see. They're going to make you know the base change formula. So how do I write this using the base change formula? You're going to say log of 3 over the log of our base, because remember, base goes on the bottom, plus 1. This is what you're going to see. You're rather going to see that for your multiple choice answers, or you'll see natural log of 3. Again, I'm not putting it in parentheses that this time. I don't really know why I do it sometimes and sometimes I don't. But again, the base goes on the bottom, plus 1. These are the type answers you're going to see, one or the other. Are we about to leave? Okay. And I've got to stop right there, and I'll pick back up with another video.